And we are live. How are you, Jeff?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a beautiful day today, and it's a Thanksgiving long weekend. So I think everybody's in a pretty good mood today. How are you?
Very well, very well. Just sad that we couldn't be together doing this today. Have to be in our individual houses, but we thank technology for giving us Zoom for us to be able to do this, even though we're
100%.
separated.
Absolutely.
Uh, but let's get right into it. How was your month in terms of real estate since we're talking about market update here?
I think I've all my clients that I'm currently working with, they're pretty happy. I think we did maybe 4 deals this month, and
Mm-hmm.
there are still people sitting on the fence, of course, as there usually is. But the people that were ready to put pen to paper, they were definitely rewarded in terms of either selling their home or being able to purchase a home.
Good. Very, very good to hear. Good to
Yeah.
hear that you're
And you?
keeping that consistent flow. Similar, but I'm going to spin it a different way. September was a very interesting month. It's busy. It was very busy for me. However, it was very up and down. There are days where I'm like, am I unemployed? But there are days where I'm like, holy crap, 24 hours in a day is totally not enough. Right. So it's very up and down, very, very up and down. And as we kind of got into the latter part of September, it got really, really, really busy.
I
So
agree with you. As you know, like I do a lot of cold calling, and it'd be one day I might make 30 to 50 calls and like 5 people pick up. Another day, 20 people pick up. Another day,
yeah,
0 people pick up. So I
yeah.
definitely was on that roller coaster a little bit too, which is the nature of being in sales. But overall, I'm glad to hear that both you and I had a relatively good month.
Exactly, exactly. Now, real estate aside, I do want to turn things a little personal before we start giving out the numbers. How are you and your fiance and the upcoming baby?
Well, we're doing very good. As you know, he's due November 11th, so coming up very quickly. We're just getting some last minute touches together, putting the nursery together, painting the room. We've had everything that we need already, so that's super exciting. Now it's just waiting. And the waiting part
Waiting,
is
ready?
like the hard part, obviously.
Of course, of course. Out of 0 to 10, how ready you are for becoming a father?
I'd say at least a 7.5 and an 8.
Have you been reading a lot of books?
A couple here and there. A lot of YouTubing, definitely. There's a lot of good information out there. Like our midwives are great. They're very helpful, great resource. And like I feel like the more closer I am to being a father, the more fathers I'm interacting with. Like I swear to God, I've had 10 friends who have had babies in the last 6 months. At
I
least.
think okay, well, maybe it's coincidence or maybe it's one of those psychological things that they say once you drive a Tesla, all you can see on the road are Teslas. You don't see anything else.
Except the thing is that I think every fourth car is a Tesla right now. At least
Yeah.
if you're living in Richmond. That's why they just built the largest supercharger in Canada. I think it is in Richmond, like 40 stalls. I could be wrong, but it's 40 stalls. It's
Wait,
new.
where?
It's on top of Bed Bath Beyond's rooftop parking lot where Walmart is.
What?
Yeah, you should check it out.
Okay,
Pretty
okay,
neat.
okay. Learning something new. Learning something
Yeah.
new. Now, to all our listeners, the reason why I took the time to bring this up is because Jeff is about to be a dad any moment now. So, what I'm trying to say is, if Jeff becomes a dad sooner than what we think, there is a high probability for that. Jeff is going to be out of commission for podcasting for a little bit.
So yeah, apologize in advance. Definitely we'll do our best to maintain our current schedule. If there are any interruptions, thank you very
Yeah.
much for your patience in advance.
Of course. And then I think that for the ones that Jeff really can't do, but things, there are important things our listeners wants to listen. I might have to entertain everybody just with my own personal voice, which I still don't know how I'm going to be doing it. But anyways, that is a tomorrow problem.
Yep.
With that news out of the way, let's get right into market updates. Let's do our usual. Let's give our numbers and then give our thoughts. Now, for our listeners who likes to skip, go to the end. Don't this time. There is a lot of numbers that we highly suggest that you do pay attention to because it is very different from months before.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get going. As per usual, I'll deal with the sales activity. So, in the month of September of 2023, we had a total of 1,926 homes sold in the Greater Vancouver area.
Mhm.
That is 13.2% higher than September of 2022, but it's 16.1% less than last month, and it's also 26.3% less or below the 10-year average.
Yikes.
Big stuff. Let's go to the next one.
In terms of price for September of 2023, our HPI price sits at $1,203,300. Now, this is a 4.4% increase from September of last year. However, it's a 0.4% decrease from August last month.
Ooh, okay. There's already two things that sounded a little weird. Let's get on to the next one is inventory. For the month of September, we have 5,446 homes listed. That is a 28.4% increase compared to last year's September. However, it's a 38.1% increase from last month.
Yay!
20% is something, 38% is really something else. And here's the key part. For 5,446 homes listed, it is 5.2% above the 10-year average. How many times have we said below? I think this is the first time we said above the 10-year average.
First time in 12 market updates, I feel like.
I feel that as well. Total inventory. We are currently sitting at the end of September, 11,382 homes total for sale. That is a 9.2% increase compared to last year. And hear me out, is 12.9% increase from last month. With that being said, we are 6.2% below the 10-year average.
Okay.
And Jeff, take it away with sales and active ratio.
I look forward to diving into that. In terms of sales to active ratio, we're sitting at a total of 17.7%, houses at 12.6%, townhomes at 21.6%, and condos at 21.3%. As a quick foreshadowing, this is a decrease compared to last month's numbers across the board. We'll kind of dive into that in a little bit. Just to quickly touch on rent. So at the time of this podcast, we don't have the full September numbers. So we will refer back to August. Now, in August, we saw the 6th consecutive month where we saw a month-to-month increase in rent for prices in Metro Vancouver. This applies to unfurnished one-bedroom units. Now, last month, it went up by $32 to $2,438. That's a 1.31% increase. But furnished units actually saw a 3.3% decrease to $2,555. Interesting. Another noticeable change is that in Langley, we saw furnished one-bedroom units drop by 15%. Probably the biggest drop that I've seen looking at rent for this many months. And on the flip side, currently the most expensive neighborhood to rent a one-bedroom unit is, you probably guessed it, West Point Grey / UBC at a staggering $3,144. That's crazy. Averaging.
I finish it up. I have another update on the number that you just provided. Go ahead.
It's crazy, but understandable given the uptick in demand. It also drove the prices up because it coincides with the September new semester, everyone trying to find housing. If you look online, a quick Google search, you'll see how much of a need there is right now for housing in UBC particularly. We feel for all the university students out there. We get requests on the daily from students trying to find assistance in housing, but we'll see where it leads. Hang in there. Last thing I want to touch on in terms of rent is just a refresher on what the top 5 most expensive cities to rent in is in all of Canada. Vancouver now takes the number 1 spot at $2,802, followed by West Vancouver, trailing $1 behind at $2,801, and then North Vancouver, Richmond, and Burnaby.
All right.
So Vancouver is still the most expensive city to rent in all of Canada. People here are averaging spending 38.5% as their income to rent ratio. It is really high. I'm sorry, I don't have better news at this time. Perhaps it's time for you to start thinking about buying again.
Good summary there. With what you said, I have an update because, well, I do a lot of my business in UBC area. UBC actually just broke record. A lot of agents in the UBC area, pre-sale, resale, they all know about this news. It's record breaking. They just rent out a 1-bedroom new building with parking and locker for $3,500 a month. 1 bedroom, 500 square feet, by the way.
At this rate, we're going to be catching up to New York in no time.
Secondly, I wanted to point out that your prediction of last month was incorrect. You said that we're going to go up by $40 to $50. We went up by $32. Boo-hoo.
An increase is an increase. Okay. But the devil's in the details, so I'll give you that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. With that being said, let's get into the juicy part, which is our thoughts. But Jeff, if you don't mind, do you want to share with what Andrew has said this month in our report?
All right. So, and I quote, a key dynamic that we've been watching this year has been the reluctance of some homeowners to list their homes, given that mortgage rates are the highest they've been in over 10 years. With fewer listings coming to the market earlier this year than usual, inventory levels remained low, which led prices to increase throughout the spring and summer months. In contrast to spring and summer, the September data suggests that there may be a renewed interest on the part of sellers to participate in the market, with new listings activity rising back in line with long-term historical averages. This upward shift in new listings has allowed overall inventory levels to recover modestly from the low levels we saw earlier this year. When we pair this dynamic with a slowdown in sales that typically occurs in the fall as a result of seasonal patterns, the outcome is more balanced market conditions overall. End quote. Okay.
Lots to unpack. I mean, Andrew pretty much summarized it quite well, but let's have our own take on what we just gone through with all these numbers. So I guess it starts off with saying that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that it seems like we're finally getting some inventory. For the whole past year, we've been talking about, what is the percentage that we're below the 10-year historic average? Now, this is like you said, this is the first time, I think, ever since we've done the podcast where the inventory that came out is actually above the 10-year average. Yes. And we've been doing this podcast for over a year already. Yeah. So as what Andrew said, we are definitely seeing a huge spike in terms of inventory. So I want to take this opportunity to kind of break down our predictions from the summer, from last month's market update about what we expect the fall market to do. I would say that we're 50% correct. Yeah. The part that we got right was the inventory. We knew that. We knew that this summer everybody was kind of vacationing, so nobody really wanted to list their home. And now that everybody's back, the sellers are finally putting all their homes onto the market. The part that we got wrong was the amount of buyers wanting to come back to the market. We thought that it was going to be equivalent or maybe even stronger than the supply, but in reality is that it was a little bit less than what we thought. Not that it's non-existent, not that there's no sales activity. It was just a little bit less than what we initially thought. So we always say in the podcast, things sometimes are not as linear. So I really want to see if fall is the only reason why people are listing their homes, or is there truly something else that we might have missed, right? So the first angle that I wanted to take a look at, and this was actually informed by other agents and what's going on through their seller's mind, is that number one, price. Let me just quickly remind you that the seller has seen prices return to almost the peak from the spring market that we had. You know how every single month our prices just went up. Here are some numbers for you to kind of consider for people that's not watching on YouTube. HPI peak pricing was April of 2022 at $1,262,000. And July was at $1,210,700.
I believe you mean 1,000, not 100.
Oh, yes. Thank you. What I'm trying to say is that this is a way better number to accept than say back in December of last year, when our HPI prices were sitting at $1,112,600. Right? So we went from $1,262,000 down to $1,112,000, and now we're back to $1,210,700. So it's a psychological thing I always say is that no seller wants to sell when they feel like the prices are free falling and
You
they
mean
have the
that
ability to do
you
that.
mean the technique isn't to buy high, sell low?
Oh, what? Is
Diamond
that your
hands. Where
technique?
where are all the diamond hands people?
But good point. Yes, nobody likes to do that in terms of real estate. In terms of real estate, right? But of course, now that the sellers are seeing that the prices are coming up, now they're willing to open up that discussion. And like this is why I always say, if you know that your neighbor sold a year ago at $1 million, and I tell you that your home is only worth $800,000 right now, it
Get
would
off my
make you
property. That's
exactly.
probably what people will say. No way.
Yeah, exactly, right? But then now you see that the prices has come back up, and I can tell you that hey, your home is actually worth $950,000 now. Yes, your neighbor still sold for $1 million, but your home is about $950,000. It will start to make you think, okay, it's almost there. That maybe my personal reason will be able for me to swallow my pride, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, when it was back at 850,000, that gap is way too big for me to consider anything. I don't want to lose face. I just doesn't sit with me well. I think that's one of the main reasons because a lot of agents has been telling me that that's actually going through the seller's mind. The second angle that I took on why I think the sellers are bringing the home onto the market, I took a look at the sales activity and I looked at where was kind of the peak during the COVID times in terms of sales. Mm-hmm. And I saw that back in September of 2020, we had over 3,648 sales from, I would like to say the first COVID-19 market rebound, right? Which is actually even more homes that we sold last at the peak of the market in 2021, which was 3,157, mm-hmm. right? You remember 2021? Well, maybe you don't because you weren't in the market at that time. Mm-hmm. It was so crazy that I was barely getting to sleep. I think I told you so many times, like how stressed every single real estate agent was at that time.
I feel like during that time, every time I did see you, you had like permanent panda eyes and, I feel for you. You definitely put in a lot of hard work during that time. And yeah, it was a crazy time for real estate. I agree 100%.
And that you're being nice. My friend says that at that point in 2020, every time they see me, my laptop is on my hand. It could be for a birthday function, a wedding. It doesn't even matter. Like a dog birthday. Like a couple of my friends actually got super pissed. Like, dude, you're going to come to a party with your laptop. Why don't you just don't come? Right? That was 2021. And what I'm trying to say is September of 2020 was crazier than that. Mm-hmm. Right? Why am I bringing all this up? Well, what I'm trying to say is these guys are now on the third year of these mortgages. And unfortunately in Canada, even though we signed up for a 30-year mortgage, we have to reapply every 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years are the most common ones that people pick. Mm-hmm. And the 3 years are coming up soon, AKA they're up for a really rude awakening because their mortgage is about to go from roughly 2% to the current 6.5%. And for some people, they cannot do that and they just have to let it go. And this is combined with everything else that's happening in the last 2 years with inflation. I am starting to hear that some people, some sellers or homeowners are getting quite desperate.
Yeah, you're being very kind, I think, when you're saying some people. I would say more than your average, because I don't care if you have a $500K mortgage or a $5 million mortgage. It's about like each individual person's like ability to generate income. It just doesn't line up. And I feel really, really bad for a lot of these people. But, if you flip the script, it's also a great opportunity for the people who are ready. Mm-hmm. In the game of real estate, there's always going to be people who benefit and people who do not. And our job is to hopefully help you guys be on the correct side. Exactly.
Now, I have a personal story that I'll share during the whole September that adds to the comment that I said. I was actually at a listing and I saw that someone bought a beautiful house, really beautiful house in early 2021. I think it was like February. They did a massive update into the home and then recently they decided to sell it. And then I was trying to add the numbers up, like how much they bought, how much they
Yeah.
put into the renovation, and how much they're trying to sell it. And I realized that they're definitely selling at a loss, especially
Mhm.
after you consider the renovation costs. Um, and I kind of got curious and I asked them, hey, like, ask the agent what's going on. And they told me that, you know what, they're pretty open for the dates in regards to when they can pass the home on to the next owner,
Mhm.
as long as before spring of next year. And on top of that, the agent also told me that after they sold this home, they're gonna go rent.
Why would they tell you
Are
that?
you? I was just asking. I guess the agent just didn't think too much, and then that started to give me a lot of red flags. Right, not about the home. I'm talking about the seller situation. Right, you bought a home, assuming the home is still decent and there is no ghost in the basement or anything like that. Right, you put in the renovation, you did it, like you put in all this work, and now you're gonna sell it at a loss and then go enter this inflated rental market. You tell me what is going on.
It sounds like a lose-lose.
Exactly. And this is my own personal story. And then I also was speaking with some other agents, and some other agents are telling me that a lot of their clients is like this close to defaulting on their mortgage because they just can't do it anymore. It's just getting a little bit too much, especially on the ones that took variable. And they also have told me that the ones that has been taking fixed, they're now actually thinking about selling their home. And the only reason why they haven't gone all the way to actually listing it is always that magic question we always ask each other. And
Hmm.
then what? Right.
Hmm.
And they don't have the and then what all figured out. Right.
It's just really
So
hard to stomach. I feel like, you 3 years ago, let's like paint the picture. You are a first-time home buyer. You're so excited. You just got pre-approved. Interest rates are at historic lows. You buy your dream home for 600K. Now you have to sell it 3 years later because you can't support the mortgage anymore. Not only are you going back to the rental market, you're going back to the rental market paying 40% or 20%, whatever it is, higher than
it's
you were
40.
higher than you
Come
were
on,
before.
I thought you're the rental expert here.
Whereas I was trying to be a little optimistic, but thanks for the reality check. So if you're paying 40% more than you did 3 years ago, and your income has only gone up 15%,
Mhm.
it's a very morbid situation.
Yeah.
And that's the reality that we're facing right now. Like, what can we do? We'll try to get into it a little bit, but all we can say is hang in there because tough times don't last, but tough people do.
Exactly. By you sharing this, I actually just remembered another contract that I currently have under escrow.
Hmm.
Uh, with another house. It's a nice big house. It's almost the same situation. Huge house on the west side. They don't want it. They bought it way back. But they did tell me that they have mortgage, and unfortunately, when they renewed it on variable, right?
Yeah.
And they just don't. She just doesn't want to handle it anymore.
Hmm.
Can she afford it? According to a listing agent, yes, she could, but it's putting a lot of pressure on her. So
Hmm.
what has she decided to do? She has decided to sell it. She made money because this is not someone that bought like 2 3 years ago. They bought way back, so they
Yeah.
made money, and then now they're just taking that money and going to buy a townhouse with something way less of a mortgage amount, so something that she can handle because
Hmm.
maybe she has a lot of cash, but her income isn't to that standard to be
Yeah.
able to afford all of this. So now she has downsized her life. Right? So those, when you were saying that, that reminded me, I literally have another deal that's kind of the seller is kind of in the same situation. I'm glad I'm representing the buyer in your story, whoever is actually ready.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
people, maybe in the last 3 years, they upgraded to a detached home, but cost aside, they realized that they didn't really need a 6 bedroom home when they're like two
Yeah.
people. It's just,
That's right. That's right. That's right. Now, of course, a lot of people would then question what I'm trying to say here is like, Joe, 3 months, you're talking about September was the first peak. A lot of these people, they're already too late.
Mhm.
Well, no, these people who actually have their 3 month coming up, they probably listed like a couple months ago. The real big spike, which once again, hopefully they'll put it right here, is right after the new year, which is the beginning of 2021, the spring. That's on the chart. You'll see that huge spike that goes up because that's when the market was going crazy. Well, guess what? When I'm talking about the 3 years is almost up, I'm talking about this group. Because if they try to sell now, they will just complete a couple months before the mortgage application the mortgage has to get renewed.
So what you're saying is there could be potentially a Black Friday sale in terms of real estate, January to March of 2024.
I am saying that I would definitely pay attention to the inventory numbers that's coming out in October, and especially in November and December. If we're seeing abnormally high amount of listings coming up during what we know as a low seasonal buying pattern, that tells you something. That tells you that people are seriously, they can't handle it anymore. However, on the flip side, I think if October our listing number drops again, well, that just tells you that was just a blip on the map, right? Because everybody came back and maybe the buyer just wasn't that ready yet.
Why else do you feel like we didn't get as many buyers, even though we had such an increase in inventory?
That's a very good point. Yeah, I was just about to say it. Now we address the sellers, let's quickly address the buyers. I'll list it out because I think we've gone through one form of this or another in a previous podcast, so I don't want to bore everybody in regards to this. The first reason I think has to do with qualifying rates. Don't forget about qualifying rate. Qualifying rate is your contract interest rate plus 2%. I just looked at RBC, their 5-year close, which is one of the lowest they're advertising, is sitting at 6.5%. So your qualifying rate is at 8.5% if you want to get a new mortgage. That's definitely reason number one. Second reason is, we kind of quickly mentioned it, is about the inflation number that just went up. And now the Bank of Canada, even though we didn't raise our prime rate back in September, they're on the fence for October. So they're kind of debating whether or not there should be another interest rate hike. Some people are saying 100% that's going to happen in October. There's still a group of people that saying that we literally can't afford it anymore. And I don't think that the Bank of Canada is going to do that.
Yeah, I don't think they're wrong. I mean, they're not wrong in saying that we can't afford it, but I also feel like Canada is just going to beat us into submission and until they get the desired result. And then, they'll throw us a bone and help us slowly recover.
Politics. And then I'm going to skip that because it's going to turn into a 3-hour podcast if we go down that road. Next reason, I guess, why buyers not buying is now that they're seeing that supply has increased, they want to see more supply to increase because they want to find their dream home. They don't want to buy an 8 out of 10 home like before because they just don't have any other choice. Now that they're seeing that inventory is crawling, they see an 8, they want a 9. They see a 9, they want a 10. So, psychologically, we just always want that next step, right?
Yep.
That's why our market always overshoots when it's good, and it goes way below where it needs to be when it's bad, right? Because people keep waiting for that next step, right? The next reason what I think people are not buying is probably fatigue. How many years have we been doing this multiple offer stuff anymore, right? How many years have clients gone to your listing? It's just too much work, not the perfect home. You know what? I'm done. I don't want to deal with this, especially with the other reasons that we talked about. And then lastly, I think the reason why buyers are not buying is, I don't know if you're starting to sense it, but in the last several months, especially during the summer, the media is really painting a doom and gloom situation about affordability and what the government needs to do to help suppress the market into an affordable situation, even though we know between me and you that there's nothing that they're going to do. But the general public, they might hold on to that last string of hope, hoping that the Canadian government will deliver on what they promised, and then the prices are going to come down 50%. I like how you're just closing your eyes and shaking your head.
Sorry, this is reality check number 2 of this podcast. That other shoe ain't gonna drop. So
you might as well cut that string loose and just move on to something else.
Yeah, right? I really appreciate you doing such a detailed explanation and forecast of why things are where they are and where you think it's gonna go. I think this next little section I want to quickly touch on definitely ties into that and ties into it pretty well. I want to
Yeah.
go back into the sales to active ratio and look at a comparison between this month and last month. So I did mention that the total sales to active ratio right now was 17.7%, and last month was 23.9%. We saw a decrease in houses, townhomes, and condos all across the board. And, given that our inventory increased and our sales activity dropped, it makes sense why our sales to active ratio it is where it is. Right now, for the month of September, we are in a balanced market.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we continue this trend, will we go back towards a buyer's market? Maybe, maybe not. It's too soon to tell just based off of one month. But before we conclude the podcast, we want our listeners to go away with, one important piece that they can take home. And generally, I think we started a practice where we'll offer our advice to the seller and our advice to the buyer. So, Joe, why don't you start off by telling the sellers what your opinion is on the best strategy for them?
Oh, absolutely. For sellers, I guess for this month, I would say inventory is starting to increase, but it's definitely no time to panic. We're not even close to what you think you're thinking about when we say inventory is starting to increase. In fact, really far from it. We're nowhere close to having enough active listings on the market for the prices to see any dramatic changes here. Firstly, the spike on inventory, there is a seasonal adjustment into this. As what Andrew was saying in his report is that as we enter the end of the year, usually, and I quote it here on my script, not during the COVID times though, we should expect inventory to start to build in preparation for the spring market. However, because we're still so much below the 10-year average, I believe, what was it, we're still inventory-wise, I think we're still 6.6% below the 10-year average.
Yeah.
We're still at a point where if you're thinking about listing a home and trying to get a good result, it is still possible. As long as you work with a realtor, if you stage it, you prep it nicely, and you price it correctly, the result is going to be there. And personally, I mean, Jeff, well, you're part of this as well. For the month of September, what do we have? We achieved 100% of the listing price for one of our detached houses in Burnaby, right? And we're talking about houses being the slowest market, right? And then now we're working on another one where it seems like this condo is going to go in the same direction where we're going to achieve 100% of the listing price. And no, we did not underprice our homes. We did a lot of studies. In fact, when a lot of people came in during our open houses, Jeff, what did people tell you? This is too expensive what you're trying to provide. But we were still able, and we're about to achieve 100% of our of our listing price. That tells you that the market is still strong. You just need to work extra hard. That's all.
I think that's the best piece of advice. So things will still move as long as you do the work in preparation, is what you're saying.
That's exactly. And it just means that you really need to go back down to selling 101. If your place is a dump, you're going to get a dump price, right? And it doesn't cost you a lot to change a dump into something special. In fact, it's probably going to cost you, I would say, a couple $1,000s at most. Right? At most, right? Now, what advice do you have for the buyers?
Okay. Well, as a buyer, inventory is starting to increase. That means that there's going to be a wider range of homes to look at. If you think that this means that the price will immediately come down and you can wait, you might want to rethink that strategy. Keep in mind that rent prices are continuing to increase. We've had 6 consecutive months of rent increases. There will be a tipping point where people will no longer be satisfied paying $3,000 a month towards nothing. There will be a point where they would consider, okay, maybe it is time for me to take on my own mortgage instead of paying someone else's. And at that point, if we have enough buyers joining the pool again, there will be more competition. There will be more multiple offer situations. So what can you do to capitalize this market right now? Number one, make sure that you have your financing in order. If you are ready to go and the right home shows up, don't waste time with a subject to financing. If you can get by without it, make sure that your offer is as clean as possible, meaning do your pre-offer inspections, make sure all your home insurance, et cetera, is all good. Find the right realtor that will actively help you find your home, and make sure that you do not waste time. Time is of the essence. You need to make sure that you are ready to go as soon as the right home comes up.
Beautifully said. I mean, just to quickly summarize, I mean, if you're on the fence on the market and you know that you're able to afford it, or you were in the market in the last year, but you were so sick of the multiple offers, you're so sick of, getting the right home, I think right now is a very good time for you to re-enter the market, because we have less buyers, hence less competition, more sellers, more inventory to choose from. So the chance of you able to find something that you truly like, it's, I would say, I'm not going to say tenfold, but at least it's a higher probability than what you're trying to do during the springtime.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Yeah.
Honestly speaking, the window of opportunity is there right now, but it won't be there for long. We really appreciate you guys joining us for another episode, this time with September's market update. Once again, my name is Jeff.
My name is Joe.
We're the Mike for Vancouver Real Estate. Like, comment, subscribe, really supports our podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
See ya.